He stole my idea and got promoted, then begged me to fix it when it exploded. Okay, let's see. The air in my office crackled with anticipation. I could taste the metallic tang of impending doom, a storm brewing on the horizon. All because of one man and one stolen idea. My life was about to go off the rails. It all started with a betrayal, a grand deception woven with misplaced trust. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. The glint of madness in his eyes. The corporate world is nothing but sunny beaches and golf course meetings. But the executives care about making money more than how pretty synergy sounds. They talk in sparkly promises of innovative strategies, while I am busy figuring out how to actually make money. I should have been promoted years ago. It's obvious. Damon was the type who glided through life on charisma alone. Please don't climb the ladder on my back. He had that handsome charm that made people trust him way too quickly. He spewed buzzwords like wisdom and could sell ice to a man freezing to death. It started innocently enough. 6 months ago, I was pouring my soul into an ambitious project, an optimization model for a company's supply chain. This model would blow the minds of our biggest clients in a presentation. I sacrificed nights, weekends, everything. Then came the mistake. The single act of trust that would nearly cost me everything. Damon, that snake, swung by my office with his usual smarmy grin. Travis, my man, I heard you're working on something big. That supply chain model, right? Yeah, I said, cautiously. It's still in progress. His eyes glinted with something I couldn't quite decipher. Listen, I've got a meeting with the executive team next week. If you give me a rundown, I can get them interested and help you get the funding to push it through. The guy looked confident. I hesitated. I didn't trust him. Not really. But I desperately wanted this project to succeed. Maybe this was finally my chance. So, against my better judgment, I explained it to him. Not all the technical details, of course, but the broad strokes, enough for him to understand how powerful it was. He asked a few carefully crafted questions, and I, blinded by ambition, answered them all. I should have known. 1 week later, I sat in a company-wide presentation, sipping back coffee and preparing to zone out when I saw my project splashed across the screen. And there was Damon, standing at the podium, stealing the spotlight. He changed the name, rearranged some of the slides, but it was undeniably my work, my calculations, my blood, sweat, and tears. He spoke about it like it was his idea, his brainchild. The room ate it up. The CEO nodded approvingly. The board members looked impressed. By the time Damon finished, they were already talking about fast-tracking it. I sat there, my stomach churning into knots. Part of me wanted to stand up and call him out right then and there. I wanted to scream. That's I built that. I spent 6 months on it while you were busy schmoozing. But I knew how the corporate world worked. I was just another workhorse, easily overlooked. If I accused him of stealing my work, I'd sound bitter, jealous, unhinged. So I stayed quiet, swallowing my rage and keeping it all bottled in. Then, as if to add insult to injury, they promoted him. The announcement came 2 weeks later. Damon, Vice President of Operations. A huge step up, a corner office, a whole package. They lauded him as a visionary leader in supply chain innovation. Meanwhile, I was still stuck in my tiny cubicle, drowning in the glory of my work. I told myself I'd let it go, that I'd move on, keep my head down, and keep doing my job. But resentment is a slow poison. I couldn't even look at him without my blood boiling. 3 months later, Damon's project, my project, launched spectacularly. But he didn't have the technical expertise to understand the nuances, the variables, the limitations. He pitched it as a perfect solution, a seamless optimization. But reality is rarely that simple. And in this case, reality hit hard and fast. Within weeks, the system started breaking down. Shipments were delayed. Key clients were furious. One Friday afternoon, as I was packing up for the day, I heard a knock at my door. It was Damon. He looked stressed, tired, almost desperate, a far cry from his usual self. Travis, he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. We've got a problem. I leaned back in my chair, raising an eyebrow. Oh, we have a problem. All right, I have a problem. The model isn't working, and I don't know how to fix it. I let him squirm for a moment, savoring his discomfort. Then I said, so, you stole my work, got promoted, and now you want me to clean up your mess? His face flushed. It's not like that. I just stared at him, my gaze unwavering. He rubbed a hand over his face, clearly panicking. I screwed up, okay, but if this thing collapses, I'm done. The CEO's already breathing down my neck. I need your help. I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it wide. Get out, I said, my voice colder and even. He went silent, his face a mask of disbelief. I wasn't going to save him. I wasn't going to be the quiet, overlooked workhorse anymore. I let him stand there for a moment, stewing in his own mess. You should go, I said, repeating myself. Damon Reese had nothing left to say. Damon walked out of my office, his shoulders slumped, his head bowed. I watched him go, enjoying the rare sight of him without his usual arrogant swagger. For the first time since I'd met him He looked defeated. I shut the door behind him, sat back at my desk, and exhaled. I should have felt satisfied, but resentment doesn't just disappear overnight. I had swallowed my anger for so long, let it fester, and it had left a bitter taste in my mouth. I told myself that hard work eventually pays off, that talent gets recognized, but I had learned the hard way that the corporate world didn't work like that. Appearances mattered more than substance. Politics mattered more than results. I had played fair, and I had been punished. Not this time. Over the next 2 weeks, everything unraveled. The supply chain model continued to collapse. What should have been a seamless optimization turned into a logistical nightmare. Shipments were still missing. Warehouses were running out of inventory, and the company was losing money fast. I kept my head down and watched, often only minor, quick fixes that only served to highlight the depth of the problem. Then came the reckoning. It was a Thursday morning. The boardroom was full of executives, their faces etched with worry. I was only invited because I was still technically part of the operations team. Damon sat at the head of the table, sweat beading on his forehead. He was dressed in his usual expensive suit, but his tie was askew, and his eyes were slightly bloodshot. His jaw ticked nervously. The model just needs some minor refinements, he stammered, and plans to streamline the data process. Arthur Whitmore, the CEO, an old-school businessman with a reputation for ruthlessness, cut him off. How much have we lost, Damon? Damon hesitated. Well, it's a temporary setback. How much? A pause. Then, Damon cleared his throat and admitted, 14 million so far. Silence descended on the room, thick and heavy. Arthur leaned forward, his voice quiet but laced with steel. 14 million. He glanced at Margaret Rowe, the company's chief financial officer. Margaret, a sharp, no-nonsense woman, adjusted her glasses. We'll be at 20 million by next quarter, and that's assuming no further disruption. Arthur exhaled slowly. Jesus Christ. He fixed Damon with a withering stare. Enough, we've heard your plans, and so far, they've cost us 14 million. His gaze swept across the room, landing on me. McAllister, he barked. I straightened in my chair. You worked on this project before Damon took it over, didn't you? I felt Damon's eyes burning into me. I took a slow breath. Yes, Arthur. Arthur folded his hands on the table. Can you fix it? I could feel Damon staring daggers into the side of my head. I met Arthur's gaze, unwavering. I can fix it, I said, my voice clear and confident. But it's going to take time, and I'll need complete control over everything. Done. Arthur didn't even look at Damon. Reese, pack your things. Damon's face went white. You're firing me? Arthur leaned back in his chair, completely up-bothered. I don't tolerate incompetence. And I certainly don't tolerate deceit. You took credit for something you didn't understand, and now you're lucky I'm not suing you. Damon's eyes darted around the room, pleading for help, but no one spoke up for him. Corporate loyalty, it turned out, disappears the second you stop being useful. Damon swallowed hard. In his eyes, I saw something I had never seen before. Fear. I met his gaze and said nothing, reveling in this moment. A minute later, he walked out of the room, a prior, his career in tatters. And just like that, he was gone. But my story wasn't over yet. Now, it was my turn. Damon walked out of that boardroom with no job, no power, and no reputation. He should have felt the cold and lonely walk of shame coming a mile away. When that meeting was over, all eyes shifted to me. Arthur Whitmore folded his hands on the table. All right, McAllister, fix it. Just like that, I was handed a project that was already drowning in disaster. Clients were pulling contracts and a system was so broken it barely functioned. Instead of walking into a challenge, I felt control for the first time in my career. I didn't have anyone above me to take credit or stand in my way. It was just me and a pile of damage. With complete control, the first thing I did was scrap Damon's half-assed fixes and rebuild everything from the ground up. I locked myself in my office for 3 days, poring over every piece of code. It was worse than I thought. Damon hadn't just failed to understand the model. He'd altered it before launch in order to make it sound more impressive, cutting corners to meet deadlines. He had built a house of cards, then acted surprised when it all collapsed. I called in my most trusted engineers, Rachel, Lynn, and David, for a full, unaltered breakdown. We can't fix this in a week, Rachel said bluntly, adjusting her glasses. This is a 6-month overhaul at best. Then the board will start looking for someone else, Lynn whispered with a concerned look. So no pressure, David exhaled. This is going to require full transparency. No more corporate BS. Because I had something damn important to say. I became the face of the project whether I wanted to or not. At first the executives were skeptical. They still saw me as the quiet guy who stayed in the background. But I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told them exactly where we had gone wrong, what was failing, and what needed to change. I didn't try to spin the numbers. Arthur Whitmore sat at the head of the table, arms crossed, watching me carefully. So, he said, after I finished my presentation, you're telling us this isn't going to be a quick fix. No, I said, and anyone who says otherwise is lying to you. It was clear he appreciated that someone had given him the truth. And it was the best decision I made during the whole saga. From that moment on, There was a noticeable shift in the team. In the weeks following, Damon became like Voldemort. Whispers circulated through the office and some people avoided saying his name, like he had been erased from existence. But there were few who weren't so quick to forget. Lisa, one of Damon's old allies on the marketing department, stood in the hallway with her arms crossed as she saw me. "You think you're untouchable now, don't you?" she said. I met her gaze. "I think I am just doing my job." She scoffed. "You humiliated him. He stole my work and ran it into the ground. He got what he deserved." Lisa's lips thinned into a tight line. "This isn't over." I didn't say anything because I already moved on from that moment and I had all the power. Now, for the first time, I had it. The project was stabilizing. It wasn't perfect yet, but we had reversed most of the major failures, and the company had stopped hemorrhaging money. Then, one morning, an email landed in my inbox with the subject "private dinner" from Arthur Whitmore himself. I stared at the screen. Whitmore was personally inviting me to a closed-door dinner. No agenda, no formal meeting, just a casual evening at a high-end restaurant. And I knew exactly what it meant. I was being evaluated. For the first time in my career, instead of fixing problems in the back, I was being considered for real leadership. I closed my laptop, leaned back in my chair, and smiled. Damon Reese took a shortcut, but I had done it the right way, and I was about to find out if it had been worth it. The private dinner was held at the Redmont Grill, an upscale steakhouse where deals were made over whiskey and quiet conversations. I arrived 10 minutes early. Not early, but on time. The hostess led me to a private room in the back, where Arthur Whitmore and 4 other senior executives were already seated. "McAllister," Arthur greeted me, motioning to an open seat. "Glad you could make it." I shook hands and exchanged pleasantries as the dinner started with the usual corporate small talk about market trends and upcoming projects. But I knew this wasn't just a social gathering. It was a test. Halfway through the meal, Arthur set down his glass and leaned forward. "You did good work cleaning up that disaster. We're impressed." The others nodded in agreement. Elliot Drummond, head of operations, added, "You kept your head down for years. But when the company needed someone to step up, you delivered." "That's rare." I stayed quiet, letting them talk. "What do you want, McAllister?" Arthur asked. It was a simple question, but one loaded with meaning. For years, I had watched men like Damon get ahead because they played the game while I had been on the sidelines. But now, I was here because they saw my value. I was here because they needed me, and I was going to get what I deserve. I want a seat at the table. I want to run operations officially, not just clean up other people's messes. "That's a bold request." Ben Elliot Drummond paused and turned to Arthur. "But I like it." It was Damon's old position. Except, unlike him, I wasn't a figurehead to prop up by charm and empty promises. I had built something real. A week later, I got an unexpected email with the subject "Can we talk?" from Damon. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. His message was short. "Travis, I know I don't deserve it, but I need to talk. Please, just one conversation." Damn, that curiosity got the better of me, and I agreed to meet him at a small cafe, neutral ground. When the day came, the weather was as bleak as our situation. He looked smaller, defeated, like a man who had been chewed up and spit out. He stood as I approached. "Travis," he said. I sat across from him, studying his face, a man that I wanted everything to come crashing down upon. "What do you want?" I screwed up. No excuses, no fake charm, just raw, honest truth. I didn't respond, and he rubbed a hand over his face. "You know that nobody will hire me. I used to be untouchable, and now I can't even get a call back." I watched him for a moment before studying the empty coffee cup. He swallowed hard. "I know, but I was hoping you could put in a word. Just something small. Maybe a recommendation. Anything." Studying him and feeling the raw power that coursed through my veins, I finally spoke. Damon, the man who had taken everything, was now begging me for help. For a long moment, I let the silence stretch. Then, slowly, I smiled. "When you were at the top, you never looked back." He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off with a hand. "I'm not going to help you, Damon, because this is what happens to people like you." Then, without another word, he stood up and walked out. I didn't watch him go because I had better things to do. A year later, I was sitting in my corner office. The supply chain model I had rebuilt was now a textbook case study in efficiency. I had made a name for myself not as someone who cut corners, but as someone who delivered results. As for Damon, at last I heard, he was working for a small logistics firm far from the prestige he once held. He wasn't ruined, but he would never reach the heights he once dreamed of. I was the one at the top, and this time, nobody was going to take it from me. So, Reddit, tell me honestly, did I handle this situation correctly? Was I right to refuse to help Damon after what he did? Or should I have extended a hand, even after the betrayal? I'm eager to hear your thoughts and perspectives on this whole situation. Whether you think I was justified in my actions, or if I should have taken a different approach based on everything I've shared with you. I'm open to all opinions and advice as I try to make sense of everything that happened and how it all played out in the end.